What if Andrade became WWE Champion in 2019? Welcome everybody to the BrewCrew channel, and welcome to WWE What If Part 11. This is Part 11. We are Part 11, Part 12, Part 13. We're about 3 parts away from finishing this WWE What If series. Of course, this has been a long series and all that. Of course, as always, like I've said before, enjoying making these videos, enjoying making this series. So let's go ahead, of course, with this, part 11 is going to be Money in the Bank 2019 to SummerSlam 2019. There's going to be some big changes, as this, of course, is a big part area in the WWE in real life with, of course, 2019 specifically. So there'll be some changes, some keeps that probably you guys maybe will be iffy about or whatever, you know. But it is what it is. This is, of course, how I sort of rechanged everything and all that. And also, you guys are probably wondering and interested about the title of this video, and of course we'll get into how he does become champion and all that in a little bit. Before we get into the video though, as always, if you guys are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell for future upcoming videos here on the BrewCrew channel. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get into What If Part 11. Start off with Money in the Bank 2019. So like I said, we're going to start off with Money in the Bank 2019, and really this is just going to be a quick one. Everything is actually going to stay the same. Everything to mostly these sort of matches that I remember happening, especially the 2 World Championship matches with, of course, Kevin Owens and Kofi Kingston for the WWE title, and of course AJ Styles versus Seth Rollins for the Universal title. Only difference being that this wouldn't be the first time that both of them would face. If you guys remember from, I believe, either last part or 2 parts ago, Survivor Series 2018 is where they actually met for the first time, when they were both U.S. champion, Intercontinental champion. The only sort of change, really, of course, yes, the Money in the Bank ladder match would be the same with the same participants. But the change would be there would be no Brock Lesnar getting involved, and the winner, probably you would think maybe would be the actual person who they thought would be the winner, would be Mustafa Ali. But I would actually went in a more interesting way with Andrade winning. Probably knowing where this might go for the rest of the video because of the title of the video, but we'll get to that in a minute. But I have Andrade winning the Money in the Bank contract because I feel like it would have been more interesting in a way, in my opinion, to see Andrade, who just got called up not that too long ago to the main roster, to, of course, now be Mr. Money in the Bank. So I feel like it would be an interesting thing to see. So I would have Andrade winning, but everything else would stay the same. Every match would stay the same. All the outcomes, everything else stays the same with this show. Next, we have Super Showdown 2019. Now, this was an interesting Super Showdown, as this would be the first Super Showdown that would be in Saudi Arabia. So let's, of course, with not the show, everything on the show being kept, let's go ahead and get into the keep matches as usual. Start with those, and then we'll get into the change matches. Keep matches, of course, Triple H versus Randy Orton, and sort of their final match ever, a little bit that they would have. That match, of course, would still happen, with Randy Orton pulling out the win in a pretty good match. Next match would, of course, be Andrade versus Finn Balor for the Intercontinental Championship. This time only being different, being Andrade would be Mr. Money in the Bank. But this match is definitely really good. I remember this match being really good and sort of a little bit underrated. So definitely, if you haven't checked it out, definitely go check it out. But both would go back and forth. Andrade would be close to being a champion and Mr. Money in the Bank, but Balor would prevail and still be your Intercontinental Champion. The next keep match is, of course, sadly, yes, Seth Rollins would still have his rivalry with Baron Corbin, starting here at Super Showdown, and, of course, would pull off the win, retaining his Universal title. The next, of course, is, the rivalry with Kofi Kingston and Dolph Ziggler, which, of course, would be for the WWE Championship. Dolph Ziggler, of course, attacking Kofi Kingston, and, of course, this rivalry, of course, be the same. Kofi Kingston would win and still be your WWE Champion. Now let's get on to the new matches. First, starting off, Lars Sullivan. Around this point, if you guys remember him, Lars Sullivan, of course, came into the main roster, was definitely this big guy. I'll probably pop a picture, you'll probably see. But really, of course, the only sort of pay-per-view action he had in real life was the Super Showdown event. And sadly, in this universe, that, of course, does happen. But I feel like it would be a big match, as he would go one-on-one in what people at the time called a dream match. Was him and Braun Strowman, 2 monsters going at it. I think the match would have been great to watch, great to see, and of course, Braun Strowman would actually be the one to come out with the win. The next keep match I have is Daniel Bryan and Eric Rowan versus the Hardy Boys for the SmackDown Tag Titles. Now, just like in real life, Bryan and Rowan do still prevail and come out as SmackDown Tag Team Champions. So that's, of course, where I sort of have it here. Is definitely them coming out on top. Is them coming out on top and winning the SmackDown Tag Team titles in a shocker here at Super Showdown, becoming the new SmackDown Tag Team Champions. This next matchup I sort of made is, of course, mostly to kind of sort of not do the rivalry with Roman Reigns and Shane McMahon. So I did sort of a thing with Drew McIntyre and Roman Reigns, them continuing their rivalry sort of from WrestleMania in a 6-man tag match with Drew teaming up with, I believe at this time, still the Raw Tag Team Champions, or reclaiming the Raw Tag titles again, the Revival, teaming up with Drew McIntyre, as they would face off against Roman Reigns and his cousins, the Usos, in a 6-man tag action. But even though with the help from the Usos, Drew McIntyre would pull off the win and get sort of a win back over Roman Reigns, but this rivalry would, of course, still continue. The final change match would be Chris Jericho, of course, returning, this time facing off against Sami Zayn, which, of course, this would be sort of still Sami in his, heel run a little bit. Mostly just made it because I feel like it would have been interesting to have on the show. Back and forth action, pretty good match, and Chris Jericho would come out with the win. Next is, of course, the first and only pay-per-view named this is, of course, Stomping Grounds. Of course, a lot of matches, though, on this, but here's some, of course, some good keep matches, which we'll get into those real quick. With the keep matches, first starting off with Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre continuing their rivalry, with Roman Reigns pulling out the win like in real life. Becky Lynch versus Lacey Evans for the Raw Women's Championship would, of course, happen as well, with Becky Lynch retaining and continuing her reign as Women's Champion. Bayley versus Alexa Bliss would also happen for the SmackDown Women's Championship, which, of course, would be Bayley retaining and still being your champion. Samoa Joe versus Ricochet, who, remember, at this point, Samoa Joe is United States Champion. He would actually reclaim the championship back at Money in the Bank against Rey Mysterio. If you remember, Rey, of course, was United States Champion after WrestleMania. Money in the Bank would be sort of where he would lose the title back to Samoa Joe, and Samoa Joe, of course, here would face Ricochet, where he would lose to Ricochet, and Ricochet would go on to become United States Champion. Next, of course, would be the sort of special guest referee no disqualifications match with Seth Rollins and Baron Corbin, with Lacey Evans being the special guest referee. Match would be the same. Becky Lynch would be involved, of course, around this point, like in real life. Everybody knew about Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins sort of dating, and of course, and later on being engaged and all this and all that. And of course, leading into the match with Extreme Rules, which we'll get that in a minute. But Seth Rollins again would retain and still be your Universal Champion. But the end off the keep matches is, of course, the interesting one, as Kofi Kingston would face Dolph Ziggler in a steel cage match. But this is where I would have the twist, though, in this match, is after his win in a grueling steel cage match, this, in my opinion, is where Andrade would come out on top. Attacking Kofi Kingston from behind, throwing him back in the cage, sort of locking the cage up, even probably getting a little bit of help from Dolph Ziggler, stopping Big E and Xavier Woods. Back in the ring with a ref, Andrade would hit the hammerlock DDT, 1, 2, 3, Andrade would become your new WWE Champion. Everybody would be in shock of but definitely that quickly, Kofi Kingston losing the WWE Championship, and Andrade, and just still only a few months into his run on the main roster, becomes WWE Champion. Definitely it would have been a shocking moment, and I think this would have been a perfect moment for him to become WWE Champion, in my opinion. But, of course, that doesn't end off Stomping Grounds, as we still have our new matches to make. First, the Hardy Boys, New Day, Heavy Machinery, and, of course, Eric Rowan and Daniel Bryan, Rowan and Bryan, defending their SmackDown tag titles against the 3 other teams in a Fatal 4-Way match. And even though against all odds in a Fatal 4-Way match, they would pull out the victory and still be your SmackDown Tag Team Champions, still being champs on SmackDown. Another match I had would be Finn Balor versus Chris Jericho for the Intercontinental Championship, with Chris Jericho chasing after number 10 as Intercontinental Champion. And in my honest opinion, I think he would have done it here, would definitely do it here. And a great match with Finn Balor, getting the win, winning the Intercontinental Championship for a 10th time, and being your new Intercontinental Champion. Now, this next match, I definitely forgot that I made, and even though if you guys remember me mentioning that Dean Ambrose had his last match back at WrestleMania, Dean Ambrose would actually have his last match here against a long rival with Bobby Lashley, and this could go either way. Lashley would win, or Dean Ambrose would win, but I looked at the rest of these parts and the other parts. I do not see Dean Ambrose that I have written down. So this would be Dean Ambrose's last match in WWE. So either way, it would be his last match with either way it would go. But this match, of course, would happen here at Stomping Grounds. Next show is, of course, Extreme Rules 2019. Of course, going straight to the keep matches. First, starting off with sort of a change, as I believe this was a 2-on-1 handicap match. But it would be sort of really just a keep Alexa Bliss versus Bayley for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Bayley would retain, even though with the help from Nikki Cross, who, of course, aligned herself with Alexa Bliss. Bayley would still retain and still be your, of course, your SmackDown Women's Champion. Next match, of course, AJ Styles versus Ricochet in a really great match, and AJ Styles yet again would become a United States Champion yet again. In a really great match, and a little help from the OC, from Anderson and Gallows. Of course, another keep match would, of course, be Aleister Black versus Cesaro. Aleister Black, of course, doing his little thing on SmackDown and all that. Great match between the two, as of course, like in real life, and Aleister Black would pull out the win. The next keep match would be Heavy Machinery versus The New Day versus Bryan and Rowan for the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. And of course, like in real life, this is where The New Day would become the new SmackDown Tag Team Champions. Would become the new SmackDown Tag Team Champions, and yeah, definitely getting themselves another Tag Team Championship to their name for The New Day. And of course, the main event of this show would of course be the mixed tag team Extreme Rules match with Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins versus Corbin and Lacey Evans in an Extreme Rules winner takes all match. Of course, the match would be the same, winners would be the same, but the only change would be Brock Lesnar would not come out. Maybe he would, but maybe it would happen probably on the Raw after, still setting up a match between Rollins and Brock Lesnar, but it would not be a cash-in since he is not Mr. Money in the Bank, since that was Andrade. Now going into our change matches, first with Roman Reigns versus Drew McIntyre, maybe in like a no-holds-barred match. Of course, this is sort of a change because remember, as I said before, there's no best in the world Shane McMahon, there's no rivalry between him and Roman Reigns, if you guys freaking remember that, which, horrible. But continuing sort of this rivalry between him and Drew, and sort of this would be sort of the final match between the two. And sadly also, yes, no Undertaker would be involved. No Undertaker as well, of course, would not be involved in this match. If you guys also remember, if you guys actually have caught on, and now that I'm remembering, in the Super Showdown 2019 also had Goldberg and Undertaker. I full on scrapped that match and did not do that match because of just how bad that match was. So there would be no Undertaker and Goldberg, nothing like that. So that, of course, would be a match that would not happen at Super Showdown 2019. But coming back to this, Roman and Drew would have a pretty good back and forth no-holds-barred match, and Roman would come out on top as always, and of course end his rivalry with Drew McIntyre. The next match would be Shinsuke Nakamura versus Chris Jericho for the Intercontinental title, and just like in real life with Nakamura beating Finn Balor to become Intercontinental Champion, he would do it here. Yes, Jericho would have a short reign during his 10th reign as Intercontinental Champion, but I had to do some way of Nakamura becoming Intercontinental Champion again, which of course would happen here with him becoming Intercontinental Champion for the first time, defeating, of course, a Hall of Fame name in Chris Jericho. The final change match, I should say, would of course be a matchup between Andrade versus Andrade and, of course, Kofi Kingston. Kingston getting his rematch and wanting to take his WWE Championship back against Almas. The two would go back and forth. No stipulation really for this match. The two, of course, would go back and forth in a one-on-one match, but Almas would come out on top with a little help from Zelina Vega, who, of course, is his manager at the time, and, of course, would win and still be your WWE Champion. Now our next show, and of course the biggest party of the summer, the final show of this part, is SummerSlam 2019. Good match, a lot of matches on this one, so let's go ahead and get into the keep matches. Ember Moon versus Bayley would of course still happen for the SmackDown Women's Championship, and a pretty decent, okay match with Bayley winning and retaining her championship. Becky versus Natalya would also happen for the Raw Women's Championship in a submission match, and a really good underrated match between the two, solid like grapple match and all that, with Becky Lynch coming out on top, of course tapping out Natalya. Of course, this match would also stay the same as well. This dream match between Trish Stratus and Charlotte Flair, and a great one-on-one match, and Charlotte Flair pulling out the win, getting a win over the Hall of Famer Trish Stratus. Keep match would be a rematch for the United States title, Ricochet, the former champion, versus the new champ AJ Styles, and a really great match, underrated SummerSlam match in my opinion, between AJ and Ricochet. Ricochet would sadly fall short again, would fall short of reclaiming the United States title, and Styles would be still your US champion. And the final keep match would of course, yes, be the debut of the Fiend Bray Wyatt, as he would face off against Finn Balor at SummerSlam. Match would be the same, outcome would be the same, with the Fiend getting the win and defeating Finn Balor. Now let's go on to, of course, these change matches. First, for the Raw Tag Team titles, as the Revival would defend the titles in a triple threat match against the Usos and the OC, where the OC would pull off the win, becoming the new Raw Tag Team champions, becoming the new Raw Tag Team champions here at SummerSlam, instead of winning the titles on a Monday Night Raw. Then, of course, this would be an interesting WWE Championship match, as Randy Orton would face Andrade for the WWE Championship, in a big-time defense for Andrade facing off against a Hall of Fame legend and future Hall of Famer in Randy Orton. It would be an interesting back-and-forth matchup. Orton would have a close call of becoming champion, but again, of course, with the help of Zelina Vega, Andrade would, of course, come out with the win and retain his WWE Championship over Randy Orton, and sort of in what some fans would say, probably a shocker at SummerSlam. The next match I sort of did was, of course, sort of a change to this Universal title match, as Seth and Brock would, of course, be a keep, but it would be a change, as Rollins would be champion, defending his title against Brock. But the match would stay the same, and of course this would be the main event, but Seth Rollins would prevail and reclaim and retain his championship. So he would not become a two-time Universal Champion around this point. He would just still be in his one Universal Championship run. These next two, of course, change matches are, of course, no world title matches. I wanted to still do something with Kevin Owens as for this SummerSlam show, as this, of course, was in Toronto. So this, of course, would probably kindle a rivalry between him and Drew McIntyre, as, of course, remember, in real life it was him and Shane McMahon, but I'm not doing the best in the world Shane McMahon thing, I'm not. So Owens would face Drew McIntyre in sort of a one-on-one action. Owens would get the win in his hometown in Canada over Drew McIntyre. And the final change match, I'd say, I don't know why I keep saying keep. Final change match would be a rematch between Nakamura and Jericho for the Intercontinental Championship, as Jericho would be close to become an 11-time champion, but Nakamura would retain and still be your Intercontinental Champion. And that, of course, ends off SummerSlam 2019. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, so let's go ahead and end off this video here for What If Part 11. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Of course, as always, I enjoy making these videos. This was definitely an interesting part to go over. So, as always, let me know in the comments down below what you guys thought of this part. If you guys agree with some of the changes that I did, or the stuff that I did. Let me know in the comments if you guys would change anything. If you would have someone else win Money in the Bank, or someone else be WWE Champion around this point. If Kofi would have a longer reign or something, or anything like that. Let me know in the comments down below. Definitely would appreciate it. And so yeah, to not make this video much longer, go ahead and just end it here like I said before. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did enjoy the video, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell for future upcoming videos here on the BrewCrew channel. And with that being said, hope you guys have an amazing, blessed day, and I'll see you guys in my next video.